Welcome to the BrettJohnson.biz podcast, where we discuss business on purpose, radically fresh leadership, capital that transforms society, and marketplace stories that embolden difference makers. Well, welcome to the Repurposing Business podcast. I'm here with Vernon Hyndman. Vern, great to have you with me.
Thanks, Brett. It's really good to be here. Good to see your smiling face.
And we've been talking through a series on Web3 technologies broadly, and specifically looking a little bit recently at artificial intelligence, what that might mean. And Vern and I were chatting, and Vern came up with an interesting angle, which we're going to be delving into today. But before we go there, Vern, why don't you just give us a bit of your background, tell us a bit about yourself, where you come from, what you're interested in, and what you're doing.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm married to Shelley. We've been together for 42 years now, 43 years, if you can believe it, and 4 kids, and adult kids. And now I'm a grandpa, and I watch my granddaughter regularly, so we have that. I'm on my 3rd career. First career, I was a biomedical research engineer in anesthesia, University of Texas Southwest Medical School last, studying the autonomic nervous system. And it seemed like a segue. It seemed like that was a dead end for me. But what do you know, after all these years, we're back there. We were on the internet.
Like anesthesia to be a dead end, Vern.
No, exactly. Yeah, you pick. You know, that's the thing about it. You pick your anesthesiologist carefully, and then coin toss on your surgeon, because if your anesthesiologist fails, you're in big trouble. Yeah. So we were on the internet as researchers before the internet, before the browser was invented. So I transitioned into network engineering and was an entrepreneur for another career, and then major life change around 2001. And I'm now pastor, sort of. We're doing some interesting things around pastoring. I got a master's in entrepreneurial ministry and a doctorate in semiotics with Dr. Len Sweet. So semiotics and future studies. Semiotics is a study of metaphor and linguistics. And interestingly, that's going to come up in our conversation today, because linguistics has something to do with all this. But the metaphor part, seeing the metaphors of Scripture, incredible. New eyes. One thing about doing a higher education doctorate, if it doesn't make you more curious, you wasted your money. So I'm more curious, and I'm learning a ton, and happy to be so. And Lemon Leadership, quite a few years now. In my master's, I recommended it to the cohort, and they continually used it every year after that. It was so powerful. Very big fan of Lemon Leadership. It's a perfect size tool for a lot of the stuff I do. And really appreciate the shared language. So in my work, I often am producing shared language. My primary gig is I help middle-aged guys become romantics. And so I help them stay married. I help them become better fathers, more holistic human beings, and better Christians. And the idea is we do that by metaphor. We live our lives by metaphor, for bad or for good.
And Vern, you see this as a particular problem for middle-aged guys, do you?
Well, the beauty so when we're younger, we can still muscle through. When we're younger, the problem exists younger, but we can muscle through. And around middle age, well, anywhere over 40, I guess middle age, I'm using a rather loosely. Whatever has been pushed, whatever we've used to muscle through, it starts to wear a bit. And so the idea, I use this acronym SPIRE: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. The idea is we tend to work in the realm that we're most comfortable. And and when we do that, it's like working out one arm and not the other. You get
Yeah.
a buff on one side and flaccid on the other. So the idea is to be fully human, as Jesus was fully human, to experience life in the very best possible way.
It's interesting. In the first book I wrote, Convergence, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see Convergence yet, but
I bought it. Yes, I got everything you wrote. I bought everything you wrote.
Okay, yeah. Well, there I make the observation that re-choosing your spouse is the antidote, is the real thing to the midlife crisis. The midlife crisis is the fake. So it sounds like you picking people up where they should be in the season of re-choosing their spouse and helping them actually do that with some practical tools and mentoring and so on.
Yes. Regripping, and to finish well, because I believe that life is cumulative, and the capacity for us to influence the world for good increases over time. And when you got here today, you spent 0% of your time trying to impress anybody. You're just fully in the moment, excited about what we're going to do. And when we're younger, we spend a little more time trying to impress people.
There we go. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Lemon Leadership. So Lemon Leadership, as a reminder for people who might not have seen the book or read the materials, is L is for luminary, like Vern. Entrepreneurs, also very entrepreneurial. Managers, organizers, and network. So it's networkers. So it's an acrostic for 5 types of leaders. On the one hand, it's pretty simple, and yet it does have lots of nuances we can dig into. And today we're going to dig into this question of, as we see the huge change that's taking place with artificial intelligence, Web3 related technologies broadly, and Vern and I are young enough to have been through a couple of those cycles, Web 1, as he alluded to, and Web 2, and now we're on to Web 3, to see some of the patterns. And we want to talk about, so how would different people respond to that if they're a luminary, if they're an entrepreneur, manager, an organizer, a networker? What would threaten them? What would they be excited about? How could they use it? What would be some of the dangers? So I'd love to dig into some of your reflections on that, Vern.
Oh, I had a wonderful time preparing for today. One of the things that you and I experienced when we were young and we had to do a school report, we would hope that we could find enough information on a given topic. We're like, I hope the encyclopedia has something. I hope I'm able to ferret out enough stuff that I can produce a report. And the world today is inverted to that. There is a deluge, a tsunami of information. And the trick is finding out what is true and what is valuable and then what's going to work for your report and get you a good grade, and so kids have a completely different realm to work within, and we've had to make that shift. And then we have people, operatives outside of the Christian community, using the fact that we're overwhelmed with this stuff to their advantage. I think one of the operatives in the U.S. says, "Flood the zone with poop," and he doesn't say poop. He's saying, when we're in trouble, just flood the zone with information, and they won't be able to keep up, and we can have what we want. And so, as Christians, we're trying to keep our eye on the ball. We're trying to love well. How does that look? And So as I look at these, as I looked at AI, I thought, there's a significant number of people approaching it with trepidation, and I get why. There's things to be careful of, but I think today, as we mentioned, I would really like to look at what's positive. What can we get from? What are these slices? How do they respond? How would they find it valuable? And I'm assuming, for instance, that probably people maybe haven't used it in this mode yet. So at the risk of at the risk of insulting people, I thought I'd just make up some. As we look at the different slices, what do I imagine someone who's a luminary? What would I imagine a really good use for a luminary, for an AI? How to form a query. Yeah. So the idea of AI is it's taking linguistics, parsing them, coming up with a matrix of what that means, and then searching all of human knowledge as it exists today.
Right. So let's unpack that. But just to go back to your earlier point, I remember in the 1980s, I think it was, there was a guy by the name of Richard Saul Wurman. He wrote a book called Information Anxiety. And he's also the guy who designed the first yellow pages and a lot of city maps. He was an architect, actually. And he came up with visual ways to present a lot of data. A map is a lot of data, but useful ways to present even something as simple as a telephone directory in a new format to overcome the information anxiety. And it sounds, Vern, like you're saying that with AI, we have the possibility, if we know how to ask the right questions, to actually dial down the anxiety when it comes to the information overload.
Yes, that is so true. When I was teaching college a few years ago, I used to make a pie graph. And at the bottom of the graph, there was a small slice that was, here's what you know. And then another beside that, here's what you know you don't know. And then the rest of it was what you don't know is complete and utter ignorance. And then there's another little slice at the end that says what you know but you don't want to know, which is denial. Denial is not just a river in Africa. And so what I told my students is, if we can make the slice of what you know you don't know larger, you can go find out in a very short period of time. But if I can teach you to formulate a question so that you can find out what you don't know, you can quit college. You are done. Like literally, that is the point. And interestingly, that is the quest of AI. The quest of AI is learning to make a query. How can you ask the question? If you have something that has this, and so one of the first things you do with AI is ask AI how to ask the question. I have this idea. I would like to ask a question. I'm not sure how to parse it. I'm not sure that. So there's a couple of tricks at the beginning that I thought we might run over. And one is you can tell it what mode you want. So you can say, be my consultant.
Yeah.
You can ask it for a mode, and it will give you that. If you ask it for a list of things and it gives you 20, you can say, yeah, that's great, but give it to me in a spreadsheet and it will do it for you. So mode, the method. So before we start a conversation, just knowing that how you ask, you don't even actually have to know how to ask the question. You can ask it. One final thing with that, it's not uncommon for you to argue with it. It's a conversation. It's not like Google where you ask a question and you have to reformulate it. It's a continued conversation. So often I'll ask it a question and it will give me an answer that I know is wrong or incomplete. And so I ask it another question that I know will butt up against that one. And then I ask it to reconcile the two. And it has to do that. It usually apologizes. So the beginning of this is modality. How do we ask a question of something that has this kind of power?
So give me an example in your world. What's a recent question that you don't mind sharing that you might have asked, and how did that go?
So I'm into metaphor, and one of the things that I find, I'm not always doing scripture, but as I sometimes am. So one of the questions I asked is, give me all of the known examples where Jesus was saying something and he was actually quoting the Old Testament. Because it's everywhere, right? So I asked a very religious question. That would take me a long time to figure out. And I got a fairly good answer. Another question.
How quickly?
Seconds.
Yeah.
Seconds.
Seconds.
Yeah, seconds. So biblical research, it's helpful. One thing with this, I never, ever, ever buy the answer. If I generally, like a good attorney never asks a question they don't know the answer to. And one of the things I find with this, I ask it a question and I have a pretty good idea where the answer is going to be. And what I find is 5 of the responses are things that I'm very familiar with. And 2 are things that I'm also familiar with, but wouldn't have thought to include. So it's really good at scoping.
Yeah. So recently I had a client, they're making some organizational changes. They want to make sure that their best people have an ownership mindset. So then I just typed into OpenAI, what is an ownership mindset, right? And it came back with 10 things. Now, I had come up with a list prior to that, 2 lists. One was the activities of somebody with an ownership mindset, if you like. And the other was the identity of somebody with an ownership mindset. And it came back with the activities, nothing on the identity side. Yeah. So then I tweaked the question, what are the personal characteristics, if you like, of somebody who has it? And then it came up with something more like my, two columns. And it was great to be able to check. And it's a sanity check for you. And yes, certainly it did have some things and also worded things quite nicely.
Yes.
And, so it was a good sanity check. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're trying to find, when you get in a stopping point like that and you have something you can't get, one of the tricks I use, you type into Google the phrase you're looking for, look down and then hit the images with the phrase, hit the images and go down 3 pages. And it'll stimulate something that will go back into AI.
Yeah. Now, I did have another situation where I knew nothing about the answer. I was dealing with a client, and they wanted to know the difference between how 3 states were handling a topic, a particular area. I mean, I didn't know. But while the client was talking, I looked it up, and I got a list of things and a broad criteria back pretty quickly, which is, it gives you on-the-spot context. At least you're in the right ballpark. It gives you a direction that you should go in. So that's a couple of things that I've done. So, Vern, let's just unpack the Luminary Entrepreneur Manager Organizer Network. What's the kind of question, or what's a good positive use, would you say, of AI for a Luminary?
So Luminaries asking why, these large questions, long-term whys. And so I thought about a sample query for a Luminary. And I said, so this is a sample query. Identify emerging technology trends and recommended innovation pathways for my small company, outlining potential new areas of expansion and market opportunities.
Wow.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
And it's not like Google, okay, that's the question, I hope I get an answer.
Yeah.
That's the beginning of a conversation I'm going to have, and it's going to give me something that is in the ballpark, and I'm going to dial it in. So that would be the beginning query. When you're starting out, if you can get a good query, a good, fairly open query, it will give you, so what will happen, it'll give you 6 points. And you can say, number 6, dial in number 6. Give me a thing on number 6.
Okay, so let's unpack your query a little bit. I mean, you didn't mention the industry, you didn't mention the type of business. You said it was a small business. You wanted to know technology trends, things that you could pursue. So what are some of the attributes of a good question? You said it's got to be open-ended. Is that better?
Yes. You can always dial it in. And so what happens, it even saves typing, because if you do way more open than you think you're going to have, you can, and it gives you a list. You can say, no, you don't even have to type in the question. You're like, hey, number 6, blow that out. When I was preparing for today, I didn't want to miss anything. So I said, write me a course for AI, a beginning intro course for AI. And it gave me a 12-week course. And then I went through the thing, and I asked it any terms that I was unfamiliar with or history I was unfamiliar with, say, blow that one out for me. Give me a lesson on that. So within about 2 hours, getting ready for today, I had a much more holistic conversation for today.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, a couple of the questions I made AI make for me.
Great. Okay, so the luminaries are asking the why questions and big questions and so forth. What about the entrepreneurs? How would you, with your entrepreneur hat on, how would you approach a decent question in AI, something that's going to be useful, positive, helpful?
Yes. So the AI, the entrepreneurs, wherefore, how are we going to do this? And again, from your work, fail fast. Give it a shot. Get out there, do it. Don't equivocate. Don't agonize over the question. Let's get out. If there are no, I so related to this. Entrepreneurs don't ever make a mistake. I love that. So here's the query I did for a let's see, managers. Um, I think unfortunately, I think I missed. So I'm going to have to make this up as I go along.
Yeah,
The
that's good.
entrepreneur, the entrepreneur might ask, I'm moving a small construction firm um, into a new practice area, and I need to talk to a banker about getting funding for that. Who are the top funding agents in that area, and then where can I find the the work that I can bid on so that I can sell that to the banker. So basically, I would be asking who are the people who are bid letting, so I can go get the bid let, and when I get the bid let, how can I sell? Who are the bankers that I would most likely be open to that? So and in the process, RFQ. If I'm doing an RFQ, if I'm doing a request for quote, in the past, you just sweated bullets and did it. In this case, I would feed the RFQ into AI and say, do your best bet at producing the corresponding work for this, and then I would tweak it, and it would cut the time down by about 80%.
Yeah. I think that's a significant thing, the idea of cutting down time and improving quality. So, it's not just an open question. You can feed in something you have. So you can say, oh, here's a previous quote I've done for doing a remodel of a house or a office complex or something. How could you improve it? What am I missing? That sort of thing. I know I decided just for fun to put my old resume in. Now, resumes back in the day were pretty straightforward things, and then I didn't use OpenAI. I used another site. There's a site called TinyWell. It's all free AI tools mostly, and one of them is like a paragraph writer, an essay writer. So I just dumped in my old resume, and then chose the voice. Like, is this an excited voice? Is this a serious voice? Is this a humorous, etc.? And then it spewed back something looked like somebody was really trying to sell me. It was.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And to kind of compound on that, one thing that we gravitate to the first and most popular Chat GPT, but one of the other things to keep in mind is often entrepreneurs are often taking complex ideas from for instance, a technical idea, and creating a metaphor so financial people will understand the risk, or creating a metaphor for so that's another really. So you can go on a graphical one, and you could say, give me a visual metaphor for this business idea that I have. And it'll come up with a ton of them. You can ask it, like entrepreneurs often get logos. You can ask it for a logo, and it will produce a ton of them. I've used for the last couple of logos I made. I have a new company called One Redemption Road, and I had it made a logo for me. It's phenomenal. I would have paid $5,000 for it.
Fantastic. Now, that's pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. And of course, we hear about AI doing artwork and so on, and reviewing all of the work of Renoir or whoever, and then producing something that's not a replica, but taking all of the style and the elements. So for logos, practical for an entrepreneur. I love your idea, because Luminaries can come up with brilliant ideas, but not everybody gets them. But the entrepreneurs have the gift of saying, if we tweaked that, if we repackaged it, if we shaved off a bit over here, if we added a bit over there, we could sell this puppy. And so AI can help with that.
There's one other area of that I think is really interesting. You can pick any of your writing, something you've written, and you can say this exact essay, but use the voice of Dr. Seuss or any other voice. You can have it any, like if you can think of Shakespeare, you can say, could you rewrite this in the voice of Hamlet? And it will do it. And the reason I bring that up is that idea of being able to say things in a different way. So I'll give you an example for an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur can say, I have this, I'm working on this vexing issue, and you describe the issue the best of your ability. How would the construction industry deal with this kind of an issue? Like it might be for instance, a Gantt chart. It may come back with a Gantt chart. How do you make sure you get paid? Well, one thing is to make sure you have a point at which everybody agrees and there's a visual representation of it.
Mm,
So you
mm.
can ask it cross industry thing. One of the things I got paid a ton of money for in the past, which this is going to really impinge on, I just want to keep track of. Uh, I would be, because I was an IT guru, I was going into these various industries and I would pick methodologies from like a dry cleaning industry and repurpose it for a medical context because they don't see each other's business processes. And I think that AI has the capacity to ask open-ended questions. How do the business processes around this work in dry cleaning, or pick something arcane?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's given me a few ideas. I've had people on my case recently too. Some people asked me a few weeks ago, what about lemon leadership for teenagers and for children? I'm like, oh yeah, I have one of those. I have one, on my shelf over here from way back. It's the teen version over here that I've never finished. Well, now I'm going to get AI maybe to finish it for me, Vern. That's a great idea.
Well, yeah. And so the one thing I have had a pretty good look at your incredible brain and creativity, and it won't actually do it. What it will do, somebody said one time, and I love this saying, he said, you will never be replaced by AI. It's not going to happen. You will be replaced by somebody using AI. And I can imagine with your creativity and your brain power, and freed from minutia, anything you don't want to do, send it out. It'll come back. It'll be 80%, but going from 80%. And one other quick thing about this, when it gets it completely wrong, like literally off the charts wrong, does not really understand what you're talking about, and you can't dial it in. Criticizing something that's wrong is way easier than creating something from scratch.
Right.
Because it stimulates what in your mind, it's, well, that's wrong. But by being able to say that's wrong, then it incepts in your brain what's right. It's a stimulation. So even when it gets it wrong, it's still a good deal. It's like an entrepreneur. There's never a bad answer.
Yeah. Excellent. So we've talked about luminaries and entrepreneurs, and people feel they know a lot about managers, and some people say managers aren't leaders, and others slice them up into general managers and specialist managers and so on. Managers and AI, Vern, what's your thinking on the opportunities for managers to use AI productively?
Oh, this one I thought about for a little bit, and I think I came as I put my I'm a Leon. I have no M. You give me something M, and it's going to come back in a smoking ruin. It is just not pretty. My wife is an M, and she knows better, But thinking of her, I put myself in her shoes. The query I came up for a manager is, I have 50 employees whose schedules I need to administer. Be a consultant for me. How do small construction firms schedule their crews? Give me examples and software tools. Provide concrete steps or stages required.
Wow.
So there's that concreteness, right? They're looking for concreteness. And as I read that query, I'm thinking, every manager could do all that, but it's a bunch of footwork.
Okay.
And
so here's something for your wife, but you're not allowed to listen to it, but you can relay it to her. You got to say, I'm a manager married to a luminary. How do I get him to do stuff? And he thinks it's his idea, but he's actually getting through the stuff on my list.
Oh, see, that is beautiful. Now, I got to tell you, my primary business, I help middle-aged guys become romantics. And one of the things, this is more of a men thing than a luminary thing, but if you can call out the inner hero in there, if you can get it all sorted out and call out that inner hero, you'll get what you're looking for. We'll move mountains, But yeah, that's a really good use. So one of the things, because AI may not be completely familiar with, I love with the people I work with, because I have them all read Lemon, we have this shared language that is so valuable. And you may have to do some interpretation to ask the questions, but it is so good. I need this to happen. This person is shaped this way. What is a good strategy? And it's good. That's a really good query. Yeah.
So Vern, I've chatted a bit with Jason Flagel, for example, a while back, and he's been teaching his own AI database. He's been building his own database with stuff that he works on and so forth. And so I would imagine that relatively quickly, a non-technical person, for example, I could load in some of the things that I've written, say, Lemonpreneur, Lemon for Lovers, Lemon Leadership, etc. Build a bit of a lemon knowledge base, as it were, and then that will assist in the kind of query like I just threw out there for Shelley.
Yeah. So you're bringing up something really important. There are wide and narrow AI. That's the terminology you use. A narrow AI is something that is for a specific type of process, or it doesn't have to know the entirety of human knowledge. It has a very narrow, it might be a theological one. And I brought up, I meant to see if I could find this for you. There are a couple of tools that require code at this point, but AI writes code, so you can ask it for code. If you literally know nothing about the code necessary to use one of these neural networks, you can have it write the code. I've not tried that, but there are two primary available. Let me see if I can find this. There are two primary available kind of SDKs, like kits that you can use, and I'll look it up. There's two available. They're what a lot of the current AI stuff is based on. And aside on that, our human brain, I don't know if you've thought a lot, but if you do, you got to eat. Our brains eat through a significant amount of energy to think, and so do AI. It takes some juice to run these things. So you can make a private AI. There are some things are not appropriate to have out, and you can make a narrow AI or have a narrow AI made that helps you mine your specific area.
Right. So let's go back to the manager then. So you put in a great query, and you talked about how to do scheduling of crews, for example, and in the construction industry. So it's really putting a practical business problem to AI and getting a much quicker solution than it would be to hire you or me as a consultant.
So let me speak to that for a minute. When I hire, in the past, I've hired accountants and lawyers, and what I found is they're not really paid to be creative. So if you ask a lawyer to do something, they will give you something that will be pretty vanilla usually. But if I ask a different question of a lawyer, if I say, I want to achieve this, help me not get arrested while I do it, that's a much different query, right? And so he puts a different thinking cap on when you do that. And I think AI is a little bit that same way. But so one thing, I had a guy hire an attorney this week. Is a $500 an hour lady attorney, and it paid him well to frame the question and get a bunch of at least get a really good question. We're governed by the best questions we can ask, not the best knowledge. And so it would have been a suicide for him to embark on what he was fixing to do without getting a $500 an hour lawyer. But it's also not that bright to go in and hum and haw and not know what you're going to say to a $500 an hour lawyer. You'll just frustrate them.
I actually had a case that in the last month or so when I asked a friend who's legal counsel for me to just come up with something. I just needed a 1 or 2 page contract to accomplish a particular thing. And they're busy and they have to sit down and they have to have clear headspace to do that. And after they were traveling, so 3 weeks later, I heard nothing. So I just posed an AI query and I said, give me a contract. I got it in 10 seconds. And then I sent it to the lawyer. And I said, okay, here's a draft. Look, I got it from AI, so check it out. And she said, yeah, it's pretty rough, but it's a start. And it primes the pump on something rather than starting with a blank piece of paper. Yeah. And you can do that with a movie script. You can do that with an advertisement, with a college.
You can do it with a rash on your arm. it's you can use, what is this? We're at the beginning of AI. They're dialing it in right now, and it's going to get more pervasive and better, but it is going to displace some stuff. Some of the value propositions that I've sold my entire adult life are no longer going to be saleable. I think about when I was an engineer first time around, I was designing electrical circuits, and they assigned me a draftsman. They assigned me a guy that took my napkins and made them into something pretty. Those guys all lost their jobs. They're like buggy whips, You just don't sell that many anymore. And there is going to be a big shift. And I think that's one of the things, the hopefulness of Jesus in all of this is to say, not, oh no, things are going to change. We already know that. But what's the Spirit have for me in this? How can I grasp it differently? And what new thing can I do? It's you got to say, in order to say a yes, you've got to say a bunch of no's. And this is going to increase the number of no's that we can say.
Yeah. So I'll come back to that in a moment, but let's move on to the organizers. So organizers, as people know, are not necessarily organized. They're action-oriented, they're intuitive. They have an intuitive sixth sense almost of what's got to be done quickly, solving problems, putting out fires, and on a bad day, they're lighting fires, they're starting fires. So those are the organizers, and they are the people to just make stuff happen and solve problems very, very well. So what's the opportunity for the organizers with AI, would you say, Ben?
Well, one of the ones, your example in the book, I love this, that you're talking about an objective that you're thinking a couple of years from now, and the organizer hops up in the meeting and starts to do it, right in the meeting, still theory at that point. So I keyed off that in this query. I have two queries for an organizer. The first one, I tried to make these as pragmatic and that people would understand. So it's for the organizer, given a civil engineering firm operating a new business practice area of bridge building in Chicago, what are the five objectives leadership should pursue that can be accomplished this month? So it's very immediate. What are the five things we need to do this month so that we can do this? That's a very open question. Probably what I would get from that is probably 5 or 6 results. And one of them, I would have them blow out as an entire course. You can ask, teach me a course on number one, teach me a course on that. And it'll give you 12 different ones or whatever.
Yeah.
And a second one for organizer, I said, based on your example, design simple trifold advertising verbiage for marketing for this initiative.
Yeah.
So what would happen in the past, they'd hop up in the middle of a meeting and go start making this trifold. But now in the meeting, they can have all the verbiage. It can mediate. I think for the immediacy of an organizer, I think you mentioned you did that in this conversation. I think one of the things that organizers struggle with is the immediacy. I want to get to okay, let me do something. And I think in a meeting where it's important to be present for the entire meeting, AI can help an organizer modality wise. If they have the incredible urge to find out something, they can slam it in there during the meeting and take a 5-minute segue instead of leaving the meeting and creating a trifold.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. That's really, really useful. And I really, really enjoy that. I like that question. It's very, very practical. Yeah. Vern, let's talk about networkers. Networkers care about the who, they care about the people. They like to be liked and they love people. People at least feel the love of a networker anyway. And these are the ones who are the butterflies or the bees that cross-pollinate in the garden and connect people and bring people together. So what would be a good example of a query that a networker could ask?
So I used the same one for this one. I used the same one as the organizer, but I twisted it. So given a small civil engineering firm opening a new business practice area of bridge building in Chicago, describe the top 5 positions that this initiative should require and provide a personality profile of the person who should do this job. The guy's got a list of people. He already knows he knows his list of people and what they're capable of. What he might not know is what's necessary. What do I bring to bear against this problem? So he's at the beginning of an initiative, the network is, I got plenty of people to do stuff. What do we need done? You know,
Right.
give me a profile. So you can ask for a personality profile of what a job would require, and that would dial in who on the Rolodex we're gonna dial up for.
Yeah. But would it be fair to ask who within the greater Chicago area we should talk to who could help us with our business?
Sure. Yeah. And who? Well, so for me, in a lot of the work that I do, I'm always looking for symbiotic relationships. So I'll give you an example of one that I would do for that. I would say I'm selling ophthalmic power supplies. Who else sees eye doctors? Who's a sales guy who's already seeing all these people, whose Rolodex is full of these people, and I could tag off what he's doing. So it's a symbiotic, non-competitive relationship. I'm always looking for someone who's already seeing the people I need to see, but would not feel a competitive urge based on what I'm doing. So far enough from me that there's not an overlap, but close enough that they're seeing the same people.
Yeah. You know, Vernon, as we pull this together, one of the things I remember is, it was probably in the late 1990s. I asked God a question and I got no answer. And so after about 3 days, I'm like, I asked the question. And I felt God say, it's the wrong question. And I realized that God's not obliged to answer stupid questions. So I like the fact that AI can force us, if we're going to use it, to ask better questions. I think this has been a good practical illustration of that. So learning to ask better questions. I mean, it's good for our relationships with each other. My wife, Lynn, says we need to ask the third question. And so the first question is, Vern, how are you doing? Well, it's not bad. Well, a guy would just be like, well, he's all right, But Lynn's like, okay, so what is it that's not going so well? Well, I've had some problems with my car or with my grandkid or with my boss or whatever it might be. Okay, then how does that make you feel, or how are you coping with it? So you get down to the third question. And so I like this idea about training ourselves. If we're going to keep up in the world of AI, we have to be better at asking good questions. And I like the fact that questions are going to be shaped by our identity as a luminary, entrepreneur, manager, organizer, networker, our primary and secondary identity. It's going to be shaped by that. So I like the idea of learning to ask better questions and a better quality of question, and then engaging in dialogue of it, right?
Yes.
Second and a third question.
Yeah, often our questions have a presupposition in it. And the trick to getting it is get the presuppositions out. AI is not God.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: it can be an idol very quickly, but it can be Babel very quickly. The way to tell the difference between what's God for you is, where do you expect to get life from? Where do you expect to get the answer from? But there is one thing about this. I think often when we ask a question of God, we have a presupposition of the answer. We've asked, should I do this or that? And the assumption is, I'm going to be doing it and it's going to happen now. There's all these presuppositions. And as we learn to ask better questions of AI, I'm absolutely sure that it's going to train us to ask better questions of God.
Right.
We will learn that in a very interactive way, that we probably have made, our question presupposes the answer, and we are in some ways limiting by asking these. I think often God's silence for me often is just an act of mercy. He's like, I'm not, dude, I'll let you sit in that one for a bit, let it stew a bit before and come back. I don't think that, I think God is smiling when I ask stupid questions.
So Vern, unpack a little bit the idea of getting rid of the presuppositions in our questions, and what's been your experience of asking questions of AI, flushing out your presuppositions and cleaning up your questions, as it were, untangling your thinking?
Yeah, that is that's a hard one. So normally, Malcolm Gladwell did some work on this that really helped me. He said a high IQ is a convergent type of knowledge. It's if you get high IQ, it means you hit the right answer more reliably and more quickly than other people. He said there's another kind of knowledge that is also very, very helpful. It's divergent, and how you measure that is you give people a paper and a pen, and you say, I've got a brick and a blanket. How many things can you do with it? And a non-divergent person will say half a page. A divergent person, you have to stop them at 7 pages. They just keep saying more. And so the idea of we normally ask questions in a convergent way. We're converging on some objective that we have. And a trick to growth in this is to say, can I converge a bit, then diverge? Can I take a hard left when I'm in the middle of the question? Can I ask? And because it doesn't take a lot of energy to do that, you can ask questions and you're converging on an answer, but you're not liking the answer you're converging on or something you already know. You can back out to like the 5th question and take a hard right or hard left on that and ask it in a completely different way and ask it in a more open way. So, and it's one thing for me to say this, you have presuppositions, but as you dial it in, you realize, oh, I got a much better answer and I said less. The question was shorter and I got a much better set of answers.
Yeah. So Vern, one of the things that we try to encourage, if you've got a smaller team, if you've got the plumber who's building a business in Pennsylvania, or you've got a software startup and you don't have an executive team of 9 people, we encourage people to put on different hats. So as you're making a decision, to ask, how would a luminary think about this? How would a networker think about it? How would so I would imagine one should be able to ask the same question from the 5 perspectives of the Lemon leadership, for example. So you should be able to say, okay, now answer that from the perspective of a manager, or now answer it from the perspective of a networker.
So in order to mine your incredible material and do that, what I would do, and by the way, queries can go on for years if you want. You can go back to old queries. So one good way of doing that until AI learns your stuff very well is you could go in. When I buy your books, I buy the book itself, but I also buy a Kindle version because I don't want to type.
Yeah.
So I go in and clipboard. So you could go into your description of a luminary, clip it out. Here's what a luminary is, and then type in A. I have a guy who resembles this. Paste. How would he respond to this? And so it's the presupposition in that case would be using your exact verbiage of what a luminary is, and then asking AI, given that character profile, how would that person respond in this different situation? So you could use your exact character profiles from the Lemon. You could use them in a very direct way in a query.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very, very interesting. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. That's good. Excellent. So, Vern, any parting thoughts? What makes you hopeful about AI?
I'll tell you the thing for me is that like we were saying before, the more no's you can say, the more yeses are possible. And I would, a while ago, I decided that I'm only going to do things no one else can do. If I can find somebody else to do it, I'll send it off to them. I'm only going to do these things that only I can do. And I think that is one of the things that's possible with AI. We can offload, if we can't find somebody that fits the lemon slices we don't have, we can fill in a little bit with this. But I think for me, you can cut out a lot of the minutia the trick to this from a faith perspective, from a Jesus perspective, is, we thought when we built computers in the 80s, we thought they actually said we're going to go to a 4-day work week. This is going to do so much work. We're going to go to a 4-day work week. Well, that just didn't happen.
Right.
We're working harder than ever now. I don't think AI is going to have us working less, but I think it's what we do, what we can do with. So it's going to displace some work, but what are we going to replace that with? The hopeful side of me says, wow, could we replace that with extraordinary love and setting people up for success? How would that look? How would it look for our initiatives? How would it look for us as people of faith to be known for our willingness to be generous and set people up for success? And that kind of goes into your other writing, the REP.
Yeah. Vern, one of the complaints that you hear from those with either they're disaffected with capitalism, or, they might have, through media or persuasion or whatever, they might have a bit of a socialist tilt, if you like, or an anti-work tilt, is, companies use people. Companies just go through things. So I think if leaders who are people of faith could be asking questions about, how do I free my people up from minutiae? This is my business. I'm processing these kind of payments. I'm doing this. I'm doing retail sales. I'm doing online. This is my business. How can I free my people up? How can I get rid of work so that they can do better stuff? Not so that I can do the old business re-engineering where you fire 2 people and one person's left with all of their work and you call it business re-engineering.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, there's a similar thing that happened. The biggest hotel company in the world has no hotels, right? We have Airbnb. But what that has done, there's a new cottage industry. It pushed down the ownership of the hotels and the managing of the hotels to people. And so now you have a ton of Christians on a one-to-one basis connecting with people who need a place to stay. That 10 years ago, that wasn't one of the options. They're not going to go work at a hotel somewhere, but now they can they're building equity with the ownership of the house that they're using, the kingdom equity, but also they're interfacing with the public regularly in a loving and generous way. So that it's what's displaced, that before we couldn't do that. Now we have a new tool. What are we going to do with this? For me, that's the hope is, how are we going to reflect the heart of Jesus in this?
Yeah. Vern, one of the dangers when bad work, grunt work gets displaced is that we don't replace it with better work, right? So during the pandemic, for example, when people got paid to stay at home for nothing, studies were done as to what they did with their time. And this was not research. This was self-reporting by people as to what they did. And most of them spent about 2,000 hours a year online, which is like a full-time job. So, so that's not replacing, bad work with good work. What tips would you have so that as we free ourselves from minutiae, we can do stuff that has more meaning?
Curiosity is like working out. The first time I played with Wikipedia, what a beautiful thing. It's not all true. I have to be careful of it. It's a great scoping mechanism. And I think this is similar to Wikipedia. What I would suggest for people, I don't see it as an either or. I see it as an exercise. It's like buying a Y membership. You don't buy the Y membership and pray that Jesus comes and lifts the weights for you. You go in and you do these things, and it's a social thing. Everything changes, right? So one thing with this that I think is, could we be more curious about the calling that God has put in our lives? We generally correlate our calling to our current job, and our calling's different. It may be completely different than our job, but it's usually more nuanced, and as we get older, certainly more deeper. And we may, because there's a lot of work involved, we might not explore those things. But with AI, drill in. When you're watching television or whatever, pay attention to what captures your imagination and write it down, and then form a query about it and find out about it. That, to me, that's curiosity is the answer to boredom.
Yeah.
And I think also one other thing is, often people mistake boredom for emotional pain. They're actually in a lot of pain, and they do these, doom scrolling because they're ameliorating pain. And so that's one of the things to ask your cohort of people. Do I act like I'm curious, or do I act like I'm in pain? I think that's the church. You have to have people around you. AI is not going to replace people. Yeah. Maybe AI having conversations. One quick thing about that. There are certain questions you can ask people that get them talking. And if they talk, you can build relationship. So you can ask AI, give me the 10, I'm going to be visiting somebody in this specific area. Give me 20 questions that I could ask them that would open up a wonderful conversation, get them talking.
Yeah, this sounds like dating practice for my young intern, where I've been training him on meaningful questions to ask on a first date. And giving him the opposite, like, what is it about me that fascinates you?
Yes. Enough about me. What do you like about me? What do you like about me?
Yeah. No, it's very interesting, Vern. So I'm kind of interested too. I like this idea of curiosity. I like the idea of saying no, learning to ask better questions. And I'm just thinking, so your first career was in not bioinformatics, but in bioengineering, right? Or something like that.
Yes.
And your second one was in IT and technology. Then you went on a studious thing and you became Dr. Vern, and you studied all about these things. Now I'm interested to ask AI, what's a good fourth career for Vern Hyndman, given for somebody of your age and stage who's already had these three careers? You see, I could be finding your next thing for you.
That's true, and I'm really open to. I've been 20 years doing a nonprofit, and it's really nonprofit, probably more nonprofit than I originally planned, and I'm actually going further back. My mentor Len Sweet says we go back to go forward. So if you're thinking about when you're on a swing set, right? You kick out to go back, and you to get the swing, you kick out to go forward, you go kick back. So I reach further back, and what I'm reaching back for are the entrepreneurial skills that I had that don't really apply to a nonprofit. And I'm doing this for-profit thing, which, I think your work really helped me with that. There's a permission system. I think at one point I had left this wealth-generating, wealthy life, and I'm in this more holistic life for a little bit, and I think I threw the baby out with the bathwater, and now I'm going back and saying, hey, that stuff was really good, and it's hard to get paid $125 an hour for doing what I do, but it's easier to get paid $350. Who knew?
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Vern, thanks so much for the conversation. It's been great to reflect on these things with you, and it just seems like a world of possibility. And if you had to give a piece of advice beyond the say no, ask better questions, be curious, what would be a good first step for somebody who's not even opened up like a Chat GPT account or whatever? What would be a first couple of steps you would recommend?
The first thing is I would find another human being that's excited about this stuff. There's a ton of people who are nervous about it, are negative towards it. While you're experimenting, shut those voices down for a little bit and go with somebody who's the most hopeful person that you know. And it might be the youngest person you know. It might be a cross-generational thing. But in IT and any of these things, the first 10% is the steepest curve. Let somebody help you over that and play. I think that's the biggest deal right there is play. Have it. Curiosity and fun go together. And so ask it, maybe don't ask it, what should I do with my life to begin with? Ask it something more fun. What should I do on Friday night? I want to play a board game. What should I play? What's the most interesting thing? So play. I think that's the beginning of it, is play and ask for help. Ask for somebody who's actually an advocate and is excited about it, and would give you, even a half an hour of, hey, here's what's been working for me. Now, so one other thing about this is not just ChatGPT. It's a full-time job keeping track of what the new offerings of AI platforms are.
Right. Right.
And and if you're going to do tech stuff, if you're doing text-based stuff, ask an artist to, hey, what are you doing with AI? Can you show me? Can I look over your shoulder?
Yeah.
I think having groups of people and trusting other people to open-handedly say, here's what I'm finding.
I love the fact that your recommendation doesn't move you away from people, but moves you towards people. So I love that. So find yourself an AI pacing partner. But I love the idea of finding somebody who's a digital native, who was born digital and who understands this stuff and can help you. Fantastic. I'm reminded many, many years ago, my mother teaching her father to drive a car because he grew up doing his visitation of his congregation on a bicycle. And he was quite elderly when he learned to drive. Yeah, I love it. Good. Fantastic. Vern, thank you so much. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your time. And thanks for your friendship over the years.
Thank you. Thank you for what you do. You have changed. You've made a huge positive change in my life. And I appreciate our friendship and I appreciate your work. And I appreciate you have created a context of shared language that has created entire realms of people around me that all have the same ideas. And that really is valuable. I don't get a chance to tell you that very often, but I want to tell you, I love you and I appreciate your work.
Thank you so much, Vern. Appreciate you too. Much appreciated. And I look forward to the next in this series. You've given me some great ideas today, by the way.
Thanks. It's what happens. We hang out together. We should, and literally everybody you've ever introduced me to, this is the kind of conversations we have. I have this gravitational pull thing, gravitas and gravity, they're related. And the Jesus in you produces a gravitational pull for some pretty amazing people that I've met.
Well, thank you so much.